Hello, welcome everyone. It's been a while since I've done a video, but it's kind of just been a little bit over the Christmas break, and really just kind of got the urge to want to talk about something. Might have a few videos coming up soon, just some things I'd like to talk about, but one specifically right now is the Marvel Spider-Man: The City That Never Sleeps DLC. Of course, this is the three-part chapter series that came out for Spider-Man on PS4, which they released one every month. So one in October, one in November, one in December, after the main game launched in September. So I did kind of want to delve into some spoilers and just kind of my overall thoughts with the DLC. So I think overall, as a complete package, I do really enjoy The City That Never Sleeps. I think it's really the kind of perfect sense of giving you more of what you want, and in a way that's kind of maybe either a good thing or a bad thing, because it kind of pretty much sets up your expectations about what you're going to get. So even specifically with the first DLC, which was the heist, the second, which was Turf Wars, and the third one released just not too long ago, Silver Lining, they're all pretty much kind of the same setup wise. So like you have a few missions, but then you kind of get thrown into its collectible kind of. I almost want to call it collectible, but it's basically kind of your icons on the map. So it's like the same map of Manhattan, but you get to a certain point. You get like there was the Taskmaster challenges in the original game. Well, instead now you have more Screwball challenges, which Screwball was a kind of a internet sensation gal that was a side mission in the main game. So basically you have those challenges now instead of Taskmaster challenges. Each DLC kind of has its own set of collectibles. One is about like finding recordings about something, and other one's finding kind of some different pieces of art. So I basically kind of compare those to like the backpacks and the pigeons from the main game. You also still have some district emergencies, like, oh, there's a crash here at this intersection, need police there, kind of those things. And then there's also still kind of the hideouts and underground bases that were also in the main game. So pretty much kind of beat for beat, kind of taking a lot of the mechanics from the original game and saying, okay, like, well, we're getting to this point. Okay, remember the stealth sections in the main game? Okay, well, we at least have to have like a stealth section in each of the DLCs. So you get that. So it really is, in the end, just kind of more of what you wanted, I suppose. But in kind of that ways, it could maybe be somewhat recycled, at least the ideas. But there's also a good amount of new kind of like indoor environments. It's the same map as the main game, but there's several different like new indoor environments that I thought maybe they'd just find a way to reuse, or basically backtracking through old environments. But they don't really do that. So I, at least on that point, I enjoy. But again, there's no new gadgets or really any gameplay upgrades. So kind of the skill points you've unlocked, or the gadgets you've unlocked, or suit powers, you're not getting anything new. You are getting actual new suits, which were probably some of the best in the game, like considering like the Spider Clan, the Into the Spider-Verse suit. Those are probably some of the best suits at all in the entire game, that I really enjoy. But yeah, each DLC story probably takes maybe an hour, hour and a half. That's kind of if you're just going straight through the story missions, which isn't too much time. And they are kind of captivating. So like that hour and a half flies by pretty fast. But then after that, again, going back for the collectibles, the underground bases, the screwball challenges, stuff like that, it's probably going to be maybe another hour and a half, I'd say. So you're probably looking at about 3 hours per DLC. So, kind of totaling up to 9 hours all in all. So the DLC 1, which is known as the heist, mostly stars Black Cat, who we heard about in the kind of towards like some side missions in the main game. So they kind of fleshed her out a little bit more. It's really weird, specifically with Black Cat's story. She has an ulterior motive, kind of like how her character is, but kind of gets Spider-Man to kind of help her with kind of some, I don't know, it's almost like blackmail a little bit, you can consider. And again, going into kind of full spoilers for all three of these. Um, so Black Cat was saying like one of her kid is adopted, and I guess her and Peter Parker had a relationship back in the day. So Peter is freaking out that he's actually a father, didn't even know about it, stuff like that. So it really kind of gets kind of weird and kind of cringy at some points with him talking about it, but then also him talking to Mary Jane about it. So I don't necessarily like where that went specifically. But there is at least one mission. It might be like the last two missions of the DLC where you actually start fighting with a Black Cat. So there's one where you're kind of like in this backyard of a bar or something like that, and she's kind of taking out her own bad guys, which is neat. And I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more even in the third DLC. But also there's one where you're trying to take out a whole bunch of enemies, trying to be it stealthily, trying not to alert enemies, and you can actually command her to take out certain enemies, which I mean plenty of other games have had that kind of mechanic or whatnot, but it's only for that mission. And I wish I could have, wish we had that fleshed out a little bit more. But basically, end of DLC 1, you're trying to warn Black Cat about, she's in danger. She tries to go in this building. She blows up. Hypothetically, she's dead. And it reveals that Hammerhead is the main bad guy of the DLC. So that kind of takes us to DLC 2, which is Turf Wars, which I kind of have marked down. I think it's like the worst DLC of the bunch. It's really just kind of the DLC that connects the dots between the two, and nothing really happens. I guess I would say where the heist, you have Black Cat as kind of your character that you're with all the time, and Silver Lining has Silver Sable. The only thing I can really think about with Turf Wars is Yuri as the police chief or police cop or whatnot that was in the main game. She's in there, and you kind of see a little bit of her downfall. So Hammerhead kind of kills some of her squad mates, and this is kind of her, I guess, fall from grace that's kind of in the comics. This kind of like where she turns into the character Wraith. So she kind of just wants to start going killing people, where there's really not much to say about some of the kind of the main parts of the DLC. It really just kind of seems very just cut and dry. Just pretty much everything you've been accustomed to with Spider-Man missions and such already before. But you do fight Hammerhead basically at the end of the DLC. You beat him, but then Yuri tries to shoot him in the head. It actually turns out that Yuri gets taken into custody, but Hammerhead is actually still alive. That kind of sets up Silver Lining, where kind of, as you can kind of tell by the name implying, you could see that Silver Sable is coming back, and a lot of that has due to Hammerhead's kind of henchmen and goons steal a lot of Sable supplies. This is really where they bring up the home country of Silver Sable, which is Symkaria, which they're kind of going through some struggles. They're kind of going through like a civil war, and they have a bunch of these supplies and weapons that can help maybe turn the tide if it was an uprising or a revolution or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. But Sable's trying to get all those weapons back. So again, Silver Sable, not really the best friend, I guess, of Spider-Man. They kind of were at odds at each other, and they certainly are here at this DLC. But I think probably the best writing and character relationship, I'd even say in the entire game, going back to the Mace game, is between Silver Sable and Spider-Man. Just kind of how Spider-Man and Silver Sable are just trying to warm up to each other, but it's like really hard for Spider-Man. It's really hard for her to kind of break that kind of tough face that she has on. But again, kind of what I talked about with Black Cat in DLC 1, Silver Sable, there's a mission where you end up fighting with her too, and I just really love that stuff. So like, you're going around punching bad guys, and then Sable's also going around with her other moves. At the end of the very first mission, there's actually a part where you actually fight Sable for a little bit, and that doesn't really last very long, but I love the kind of stuff where like some of the bad guys in the main game, you would shoot your like web shooters at them, but they'd like take a sword and they'd swat it away or something like that. But Sable actually like shoots your webs out of the air with her 2 guns. So that's, again, just really neat, kind of like little ideas that, like, man, they took all this time to, put these kind of mechanics in there, but they don't really show them off that much at all, like only a couple minutes. And it's something I think a lot of people would miss. And I don't think it's something that people should miss. So I'd actually like to see if they could flesh some of that out a little bit more. But you do see that Black Cat does come back. There's a part where Hammerhead's getting ready to kind of kill either Spider-Man and Sable, but Black Cat comes in, rescues Spider-Man. She kind of just says hey, I'm still around, see ya, sorry for what I did, and leaves. So she might even be a kind of presence, maybe even in the sequel, that's just kind of a, hey, this character's still around kind of thing. But eventually, just Silver Sable, Spider-Man team up. They go after the new kind of Hammerhead that's really just like a cyborg who's taking care of this Project Olympus project that Hammerhead's dealt with that Sable had. So you end up taking him down. Pretty cool boss fight where Silver Sable's like dropping bombs from her like gunship, and then you're actually like taking the bombs and throwing them at him. And then she like you web him up, and then she takes like a laser and tries to kind of, I don't know if it's like melt the little plate in his head that makes him so strong, that kind of thing. But really the biggest thing I wanted to talk about with just the DLCs in general is we have some setups of what we thought was going to happen in a sequel at the end of the main game, but now you're kind of getting a little bit more, I would say. So everybody kind of talked about like, okay, Yuri might become Wraith in the future because she's kind of gone rogue and renegade. So you get that a little bit more, especially in DLC 3, where you find this kind of case of this, I think it's one of the Magia or Hammerhead guys that she actually kills, kind of goes against her kind of code as a cop and stuff like that. So she's really gone off the deep end, really just alluding to, hey, she's going to be in the sequel, and she's going to probably have a part to play. So Mary Jane, as a reporter, is actually traveling to Symkaria to actually do some reporting on kind of the Civil War, and I think that might set up something in the future. But then, of course, Peter teaching Miles how to kind of web swing and stuff. It kind of been something they'd done on phone calls through each of the DLCs. But this one at the kind of end, you're actually seeing, Miles and Peter kind of jumping off a building together and swinging. So again, each of the things we kind of assumed what was going to happen in a sequel. It's kind of just reaffirming that a little bit. I don't think there's necessarily going to be too many big things that happen in this DLC that is going to be really important for the main game. For example, like Hammerhead is dead, which is actually kind of interesting because looking back on the main game, like the only people I remember dying was Aunt May and then Miles' dad. Again, spoilers, obviously. But yeah, so like Hammerhead actually dies. So even through all of the other bad guys, through Doc Ock and Mr. Negative and Vulture and Electro, all of them, they're still alive. They're put away, but I'm pretty sure like Hammerhead is actually dead. So he's done, which I don't know if that's kind of a way to like, hey, just making sure he's out of the picture. There's no chance for him to come back. So if you didn't play the DLC, he doesn't show up and be like, oh, what's going on here? Which I do worry about that with a lot of games. One I specifically think about is BioShock Infinite, how the kind of Burial at Sea DLCs, they really completely changed the main story of the original BioShock Infinite. So, I mean, and it's still whatever technically canon, whatever the word you want to use. But really, if you just play BioShock Infinite, you have kind of one end of the story. But then if you actually finish the rest of the story, which is the DLC, you have a completely different outlook on the entire series. So I think the Spider-Man City That Never Sleeps DLC kind of flirts with that a little bit, but really doesn't do a ton. Because I know there's a lot of games, like even like thing about recently was the Evil Within. I played the Evil Within 1, and Went on to play Evil Within 2, but I never played the Evil Within DLC and was like, did I really need to play that? And of course, you go on YouTube, you don't want to spend the money for the DLC, and you're like watching a walkthrough or the movie, trying to get caught up. But I think they did it pretty well with this. And again, I'm glad the Screwball thing is over. It kind of had its own little story arc through each of the DLCs, and it really started getting old pretty fast, and especially that, and there's more J. Jonah Jameson podcasts. Both of them, I'm just getting tired of them. I was getting really tired of hearing them. I was kind of playing it with headphones on, and especially through some of the rants that Jameson was having, I was just like, I'm tired of listening to this, really. And a lot of times it just comes to you complete a mission with Black Cat, and then when you're out in the world roaming, J. Jonah Jameson gets on and basically complains about literally the mission you just did, and it's some kind of Jameson rant, and it's really just all the same after a while. So I was really just kind of over that. I would say, again, a big part of the DLC is you have 3 new suits for each DLC, which is a total of 9, and then including in a free update, you actually got the webbed Sam Raimi suit that people had been requesting that had been in the works for quite a while. It's just Insomniac couldn't say anything. So really, since launch, you've gotten 10 suits, one of them being free. And again, even with those new suits that you get, you can use you can play like the whole base game with those suits as well. Every cutscene, in-game engine stuff all works like that. So again, really just kind of wanted to run through it. Just kind of some thoughts about what I had about the DLC. I think it's good. One thing I also find this interesting is they always say that this is the end of the City That Never Sleeps. I think something like Storyline Saga or something like that, which doesn't say that this is it for content on Spider-Man PS4, which I find that kind of intriguing, because I feel like a lot of times it would be like, okay, here's your season pass and this is it and goodbye, we're done, this wraps up the whole game. I'm wondering if there might be something else they kind of throw out here. Maybe I also want to call like maybe like an Uncharted Lost Legacy type thing, where it's not as big a scale as a sequel, but it's actually still pretty good content on its own. So maybe something like that could come maybe next year or something. That'd be really interesting. I'd love something like that. But yeah, I mean, really at the end of the day, the City That Never Sleeps is just kind of more Spider-Man based game. Basically think about whatever mechanics and stuff like that, moves, collectibles, icons on the map stuff. It's just a little bit reworked, but it's really just kind of mainly the same thing. And I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, I think they've done a really nice job with it. I think there was actually some pretty good care and new things in the DLC that shows that it's not really just kind of a lackluster thing. So I would absolutely say it's worth it. I wouldn't say it's a bad DLC at all. Though I wouldn't say it's something as, incredible as the first thing that comes to mind is like BioShock 2 Minerva's Den. I mean, it's nothing, I don't feel like that good. But yeah, I would absolutely recommend playing it. I don't remember the price right now. I want to say it's $24.99. I ended up buying it with the base game. So yeah, thanks for listening to that. Again, I might have some more discussions kind of in the future. Let me know if you had any thoughts about this DLC or what you'd maybe like to see in the future.